These are the 10 most traumatizing Rick and Morty episodes of all time. Starting with the episode where Rick and Morty both have to bury their own bodies? Let me explain. In season 1, episode 6, titled Rick Potion number 9, Rick makes Morty a love potion so his crush Jessica will fall in love with him at the school dance. But everything goes horribly wrong, starting with the effects of the potion spreading to everyone at the school dance, which causes Morty to get swarmed by countless people who are now deeply in love with him, including his own teachers.
We're both insecure enough to agree to a 3-way!
Oh my. This alone could already cause a little bit of trauma, but things only get way worse. Rick believes that he can solve the problem with an antidote which he created, but when he sprays it over the swarm of people, it mutates them into praying mantis-like monsters. But at least things can't get any worse, right? Wrong. When trying yet another antidote on the praying mantis people, Rick accidentally mutates everyone into even more worsely deformed creatures known as Cronenbergs.
You're welcome.
And after this second accident, Rick realizes that he can't seem to fix the issue.
Boy, Morty, I really Cronenberged the world up, didn't I?
Which Morty is understandably rather upset over.
How could you be so irresponsible, Rick?
Rick then gives Morty a solution, which is traveling to another dimension where alternate versions of themselves fix the problem, but while doing so, die in a lab accident.
We got 1 screw turn, and 2 screw turns, and
they will both take the place of their dead counterparts and leave their other reality behind. In order to fit into this new reality, Rick and Morty are forced to bury the dead versions of themselves. Imagine having to do this yourself. Definitely not traumatizing at all. I mean, Rick seems pretty chill with everything, but Morty, on the other hand, is left traumatized by the incident and is clearly scarred by having to assimilate into a totally new reality with a new family. I'd say both Rick and Morty can be blamed for the events which take place in this episode.
I'm not the one who haphazardly, mixed a bunch of nonsense together and created a bunch of Cronenbergs. You're the one who wanted me to make you up a roofie juice serum.
But in this next episode, I'd say Rick is definitely the one to blame for the trauma which comes. In season 1, episode 1, titled Pilot, Rick brings Morty on an adventure to another dimension in order to obtain illegal mega seeds. While in the dimension, they finally come across the trees which produce the seeds, but they're at the bottom of a cliff. So Rick gives Morty special grappling shoes in order to scale down the cliff. And as Morty goes to do so, this happens.
You have to turn them on, Morty. The shoes have to be turned on!
This accident leaves Morty on the ground with broken legs and in lots of pain. This incident alone caused Morty enough trauma to say this to Rick.
You're a monster! You're like Hitler, but even Hitler cared about Germany or something.
But after Rick fixes Morty's legs, more and more trauma just keeps piling up for Morty. When Rick reveals that his portal gun has no more charge, so they're gonna have to smuggle the illegal seeds through interdimensional customs. And Rick gives Morty the job of doing so in a way which I don't think Morty would forget.
When we get to customs, I'm gonna need you to take these seeds into the bathroom, and I'm gonna need you to put them way up inside your butthole, Morty.
In my butt?
Put them way up inside there, as far as they can fit.
Oh, jeez, Rick.
While at customs, the security catches on to Rick and Morty's suspicious activity, which leads to them ending up in a standoff. So Rick tells Morty to hold off the security with a gun, and assures him it's fine to shoot them because they're robots. But once Morty shoots at one of them, it's made clear they definitely in fact are not robots.
It's a figure of speech, Morty! They're bureaucrats! I don't respect them! Just keep shooting, Morty!
What a great granddad Rick is, making sure that his grandson is completely left trauma-free after killing someone accidentally, right? How could Morty possibly become any more traumatized from this episode? Well, here's how. Once escaping and making it home, Rick reveals to Morty that because the seeds which he put up his butt dissolved, this will happen.
And once those seeds wear off, you're gonna lose most of your motor skills, and you're also gonna lose a significant amount of brain functionality for 72 hours, Morty. Starting right about now.
And then Morty begins to seize on the ground while Rick makes a joke out of it. It seems Rick sure knows how to cause Morty trauma, but he isn't the only one who brings trauma into his life. Now, before we get into the next episode, do you want free Rick and Morty merchandise? If so, listen closely. I'm giving away free Rick and Morty merchandise to 2 lucky winners once I reach 1,100 subscribers. Entry is completely free, and all you have to do is subscribe to the channel, like the video, and leave a comment saying whatever you want to say, while also including the word giveaway in your comment. 2 lucky winners will be picked at random once the 1,100 subscriber goal is reached, and I'll let you know if you've won by leaving a reply to your comment telling you so. You then have 48 hours to respond to my reply, or a new winner will be chosen. Make sure you enter, as you have nothing to lose. Best of luck! And now back to the video. In season 1, episode 5, titled Meeseeks and Destroy, the episode starts with Morty having to kill alternate versions of his family. Already off to a fantastic start.
I just killed my family!
I don't know, Morty. Some people would pay top dollar for that kind of breakthrough.
Morty has had enough of crazy adventures like that, so he and Rick make a deal which allows Morty to choose the next adventure which they go on. So he chooses to go to a medieval fantasy world.
God, Morty, what a boring start to an adventure. Why don't we just go to Kentucky?
And during the adventure, Rick and Morty find themselves at a tavern. Morty has to take a pee while at the tavern, and while in the washroom, he comes across a guy named Mr. Jellybean, who begins to get very weird with Morty and doesn't let him leave the bathroom. This leads to Morty having to fight him in incredibly violent retaliation, leaving him completely traumatized by the incident and wanting to abandon the adventure completely. But at least Rick catches on to what happened, so when they find out that Mr. Jellybean is the king of this land, while leaving, Rick gives him some justice. After experiencing something like that, I bet Morty sure wishes he could have his memory erased. Well, it turns out he actually can. In season 3, episode 8, titled Morty's Mind Blowers, we learn that Rick has been deleting traumatizing memories from Morty's mind, which Morty has asked him to, and that Rick has also been saving them in a way where they can be replayed if wanted. So, this episode centers around doing exactly that, and replaying traumatic events of Morty's life. One of the memories involves Rick and Morty coming across a Floopian alien who wants to be killed by Rick, because in the culture of this alien, they believe that they experience a terrific afterlife if they are killed by a great warrior. But before killing him, they decide to get lunch with him. And while Rick is in the washroom, Morty is talking to the alien about how he is jealous that his species has strong evidence that they have an afterlife. This conversation makes the alien question his beliefs.
There's supposed to be evidence?
Otherwise, how do you know if it's true?
So when Rick comes back from the washroom to kill him, he runs away and gets hit by a car right in front of Morty. And then his spirit gets dragged to the depths.
Oh God, it's all real. Oh, it hurts. Oh, I shouldn't have done it.
He said there wasn't any evidence! That was a ton of evidence!
Now I know their religion's real. They have a hell and it does not look good.
Yeah, pretty understandable why Morty would want this memory erased. Another deleted memory of his was caused by him using a device which allowed him to understand animals.
The babies need food. The queen makes babies.
And he ended up overhearing a plot which squirrels had against humanity.
We'll have to re-destabilize their economy, refocus labor class outrage from upper to middle, foster a coup, and install a compliant regime.
The squirrels soon caught on that Morty could hear them, and followed him in mass, which caused this to happen.
Morty, what did you do? All right, Morty, pack your shit. You with squirrels, Morty. We have to pack up and move to a new reality, Morty. We're over here because of these damn squirrels.
On top of this, there are also plenty more traumatizing memories which Morty asked Rick to delete, such as Morty being eaten by an alien, Rick turning Morty into an alien, Morty getting his hand chopped off by an alien, and much more.
Is that a demon slug in your stomach, or are you just happy to...
Sorry! Well, I guess it's nice to know the whole family sucks.
I'm willing to bet that just like all these memories, Morty probably got what happens in this next episode wiped from his memory as well. In season 7, episode 4, titled That's Amorte, Rick is serving the family spaghetti, which they all love. Morty's curiosity on how Rick makes the spaghetti leads to instant trauma after he discovers that Rick made it using people. Yup, people. Oh yeah, we're starting off strong with the trauma already, let's go. Rick then reveals that he got it from a planet where when people end their own existence, their insides turn to spaghetti. Although, Morty isn't the only one who gets traumatized by Rick revealing this, because while demonstrating how the spaghetti is created, a morgue worker sees Rick and Morty's actions and is understandably in shock.
Are you two eating a corpse?
It's okay. It's spaghetti.
I'm calling the police.
Eventually, the president of the Spaghetti People planet finds out about humans' love for spaghetti and decides to commercialize it, so therefore begins selling people spaghetti in mass. When Morty finds out about this going on, it definitely causes some moral questions. So he and Rick decide to put an end to things by running an ad for the spaghetti, where a man with 2 months to live gives his life in order to become spaghetti.
I won't feed your sick system a profit.
What if I told you this would end the spaghetti trade forever?
What do you mean?
This ad gives a run through of his whole life. It starts by showing him as a baby, and then gets into his time as a child with big dreams of becoming an architect. It even shows his time with his girlfriend through the highs and the lows, including when he cheated on her, and even the death of his parents. Eventually, his dreams come true, as he launches a kids' toy company called Fred Blocks. After this, he then gets back together with his girlfriend, and they grow old together. and she passes away. Then the ad concludes, as he dies in order to become spaghetti. This ad traumatizes everyone who sees it, and causes the spaghetti to stop being sold. And it also leaves the family no longer doing spaghetti nights and instead eating Salisbury steaks, which Rick makes a pretty funny joke about.
Is it actually Salisbury steak?
Do you want to know or not?
No thanks.
Honestly, if you knew, you might yourselves. That's the last thing I'll say forever.
Speaking of Rick, let's talk about the episode which causes him enough trauma to where he genuinely does want to end his own existence. In season 2, episode 3, titled Erotic Assimilation, Rick comes across an ex of his named Unity, who is a collective hive mind which inhabits multiple people's bodies, and continues to take over more and more of them by puking in people's mouths. Rick then travels to Unity's planet with Morty and Summer, and this all leads to him starting to redevelop his feelings for Unity, and begin giving in to his desires.
We need a hang glider and a crotchless Uncle Sam costume, and I want the entire field of your largest stadium covered end to end with naked redheads, and I want the stands packed with every man that remotely resembles my father.
Which causes him to do excessive amounts of partying with Unity. And while doing so, Unity shows Rick just how crazy it is.
You see that town across the river? Watch this.
Whoa!
Whoa! It's okay, I evacuated the town.
Summer and Morty are annoyed with Rick's actions, so Rick just tells them to leave the planet, which makes Unity feel bad. But Rick explains to Unity why they shouldn't care about Summer and Morty while leaving to the washroom.
They're no different from any of the aimless chumps that you occupy. They just put you at the center of their lives because you're powerful, and then because they put you there, they want you to be less powerful. Never gonna happen though, right?
When he gets back from the washroom, Unity is gone and has left a bunch of notes for Rick, which talks about how they can't be with him because they have a problem with themselves. Because no matter how much they keep unifying species and continuing to spread as a hive mind, they still can never seem to be complete. This causes Rick to deeply reflect on himself and how no matter what he does, he can never feel complete, even with all the power which he has, and how this power makes him devalue others, such as his own grandchildren. Kind of like how Unity devalues individuals by essentially enslaving them for the benefit of self. This all causes Rick to head home, and when he gets there, he's asked by Summer about what happened with Unity, and he bluntly expresses his thoughts on the situation.
I mean, honestly, we're talking about an entity that thrives on enslavement, you know? It's not cool. Fun's fun, but who needs it?
From there, he then proceeds to go to the garage where there's a scene of him using his power to give life to a being, just to kill it. And then Rick proceeds to put his own head in the same device, but is unable to follow through, as he falls onto the table in a depressive slump. This episode is definitely very deep, and the trauma Rick experiences from it is key in explaining why he does what he does, and the reasons which have formed him into the man who he is. But that isn't the only episode where Rick's trauma is put on display, as this next one dives into his attachment to his dead wife and more. In season 7, episode 10, titled Fear No Mort, Rick and Morty find themselves in a Denny's washroom, visiting an attraction known as the Fear Hole. This definitely doesn't look suspicious. Entering this hole manifests your deepest fears, and once you come out, it's promised that you will have conquered them. When Rick and Morty enter the hole, they come across some pretty spooky monsters, but shortly make it out, and continue on with their lives and head home. While at home, randomly a younger version of Rick and his wife Diane fall through the roof, and Rick vaporizes into ash. Upon seeing this happen, both Rick and Morty realize that they are still inside of the hole, and never truly left. Long ago, Rick losing his wife Diane left him traumatized and formed him into the man who he is, and now he gets to spend time with her again, but all in a way that's completely fake and not at all real. Considering Rick is a man where not much phases him, the death of his wife is his most traumatizing experience. So it would be understandable why stuff like that being brought back into his life could be pretty traumatizing. But Rick isn't the only one who's forced to face his traumas in this episode. While Rick is spending time with Diane, Morty can't seem to figure out what fears or traumas the hole is trying to make him confront. So he puts himself through plenty of traumatic scenarios, such as eating a spider,
What are you doing?
Being scared!
falling in front of strangers,
Trust fall!
None of us touch or speak to this kid ever.
and performing naked on stage. After his performance on stage with Rick, the two of them are able to leave the fear hole, but shortly after, more fears are brought up and they realize that they actually haven't left the hole. This happens multiple times over.
$8 for a side of bacon?
You kidding me?
It's a symptom of a larger concern, Morty. If capitalism collapses...
Are we done here?
And they end up trapped in confusion and uncertain if they have or ever will leave the hole, which leads to a sense of disconnection from their day-to-day lives which they're forced to live, even though they know it's probably not real. Yeah, a very strong sense of depersonalization sure can be fairly traumatic depending on how you look at it. Morty begins to grow up and graduates and even gets his own house. But eventually it's revealed that the whole time he was in fact still in the hole. Right after this, Morty's past traumas of Rick's treatment towards him and his reliance on Rick are brought up, as he realizes that Rick never actually even came into the hole with him to begin with.
I'm afraid that if I jumped into a hole, you wouldn't even bother jumping in after me. This entire thing has been about me. You're not even in the hole, are you?
Your fear of relying on Rick has been delicious.
Dear God!
And clearly the whole experience itself gave him some trauma, as when Rick asks if he should go in the hole, Morty seems really against him going in, as he himself doesn't even know if he actually truly even has left the hole yet.
Don't, or I won't know if I'm out.
Is it that good? Should I go in?
No!
Yeah, that's definitely something which will stick with him while continuing to live his life. Speaking of trauma which will probably stick with Morty, let's talk about the time his lover killed a bunch of people in front of him. In season 5, episode 3, titled A Rickconvenient Mort, Morty ends up falling in love with a climate activist superhero named Planetina. Although Morty's mom Beth doesn't seem to agree with their relationship and ends up telling Planetina to leave their house while they are playing a board game.
My son is 14, miss. I'm sorry, Morty, you're way too young.
But you were a teenager when Dad got you
I
pregnant.
was 17. That's at least 26 in boy years. Planetina, I think you should leave, please.
Which leads to Morty having a breakdown and running away from home with Planetina, where they go on adventures saving the planet. But soon enough, Morty gets to witness Planetina's fall into extremism in the name of activism, as she begins doing things like popping people's car tires, burning down a Congress building, and starting debates with minors who just want to do their jobs.
Your people didn't get the votes. Leave or I'll have you arrested.
It's you people who should be arrested. Gutting the land, poisoning the air your children breathe.
Which soon escalates into her killing them and burning down their entire work site. Come on, Planetina, don't you think that burning the bodies of this many people will lead to CO2 emissions? Witnessing this causes Morty to flee back to his home, and it's clear he is rather traumatized by the entire situation, especially during his final conversation with Planetina outside his window, where he breaks up with her.
We were so close.
You murdered 300 people.
After all of this, Morty is left overwhelmed by everything, especially when Beth comes to comfort him and the trauma of the whole experience comes flooding out.
Mommy's here.
Watching your girlfriend kill 300 people is definitely something which would cause you trauma, although at least Morty was able to escape that situation. But in this next episode, there's some inescapable trauma which is explored, and that trauma involves witnessing terrible things happening while being able to do absolutely nothing about it. In season 2, episode 6, titled The Ricks Must Be Crazy, when wanting to start up his spaceship, Rick realizes the battery is dead. So he goes to investigate it with Morty by going inside of it while leaving Summer in the ship to wait for them. And she herself gets to witness some traumatizing events, such as the spaceship killing a guy and paralyzing another in order to protect her. This leads to a military response, and in response to the military, the spaceship spawns a copy of the dead son of one of the soldiers, which tells him to leave the car alone and then melts.
Leave the car alone.
What?
Leave the car alone.
Hunter?
Which obviously is both traumatizing for the soldier and Summer. But now back to things with Rick and Morty. While they are in the car battery, Rick shows Morty how he has an entire civilization working for him in order to power the battery, essentially working as his slaves.
They pay each other, they buy houses, they get married and make children that replace them when they get too old to make power.
That just sounds like slavery with extra steps.
Ooh la la, someone's gonna get laid in college.
It turns out the reason why his battery stopped working is because they advanced and developed their own technology which replaces the technology which powered Rick's battery. So obviously Rick is mad about this and goes to talk with the scientist who is responsible for this new technology, and his name is Zeep. Apparently Zeep developed a similar technology to Rick's and created his own battery powered by enslaving other people. So they then go inside of Zeep's battery and meet yet another scientist who made his own battery by enslaving people. When Zeep realizes that Rick made the battery which he lives in after the interaction with this other scientist, he becomes mad. And the other scientist has an existential crisis while this is going on and decides to do this.
So he made a universe, and that guy is from that universe, and that guy made a universe. And that's the universe where I was born, where my father died, and where I couldn't make time for his funeral because I was working on my universe.
Oh boy, what? Oh my god, no!
Once they escape back to their own universe after a confrontation with Zeep where he was trying to escape into Rick and Morty's universe, the car battery seems to be working. But how? Well, because Zeep knew that if he began using his technology to replace Rick's, Rick would have a dead car battery and would toss it out and break it, which would kill him and everyone inside the battery. That's definitely traumatizing, knowing you're trapped inside the battery of another man's car, all while having the ability to free your people from enslavement, but doing so ends your own and everyone you love's existence? Wow. Similar to this, in the next episode, we'll cover some trauma which involves being forced to live through seemingly eternity, all while being left unable to control your own destiny. In Season 5, Episode 2, titled Mortyplicity, while eating breakfast, the Smith family gets assassinated, and then the scene switches to another version of Rick revealing to the family that someone killed the decoy family which he created. So they need to flee. Continually throughout the entire episode, the audience thinks, oh, now we get to see our regular family's perspective, only for it to be repeatedly revealed that we were watching a decoy family the whole time as they die in some crazy way. This is definitely fairly traumatizing for all the countless alternate versions of the Smith family, because none of them are ever truly able to know if they are the actual family or if they're the decoy family. Some versions of the family try making peace with each other, and some go to all-out war against one another. The entire situation overall is very chaotic, and the audience is visibly shown how it causes trauma to members of the family, such as when we get to see Jerry hiding in a closet and crying because of the entire situation that's going on. Speaking of Jerry, let's now talk about what I mentioned earlier regarding being forced to live through eternity. At the end of the episode, we get to see one of the versions of Jerry who is made of wood, and he covers himself in a protective varnish and begins floating down a river. This is definitely creative foreshadowing of him ending up having to go with the flow of things. Terrible things then happen to him, such as beavers building a nest inside him, and although at first terrified, he becomes content with this happening because it means he can finally peacefully die. But this is actually not the case, as he awakens years later in the middle of a wasteland where travelers come across him and put him on display in a bar. Although when he talks, the cowboys at the bar are shocked and decide to burn him. Yeah, of course, that's the only reasonable thing to do to things you don't understand, right? Burn it. Yet it's still not over, as he finds himself nailed to a cross. Him living this long and going through all this is clearly very traumatizing, as he gets to the point where he just wishes he could die already.
Why can't I die? This is the worst thing that's ever happened to anyone!
Is this one of the first times varnish companies saying something along the lines of, "Our varnish will protect your wood for decades," are actually telling the truth? Sucks that this Jerry had to be one of the first where that's the case. Out of every episode in this video, which do you think was the most traumatizing? Let me know in a comment down below. As well, be sure to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Also, if you haven't already, be sure to enter the giveaway, which I mentioned earlier in the video. And if you enjoyed this video, you'll probably enjoy one of my videos where I talk about the trippiest episodes of Rick and Morty. Or you can trust what YouTube believes you'd like, and check out this other video. Both options are on the screen right now. Have a good one.